how much has drug addiction eaten into the lives of Hollywood's biggest stars? For some, it has led to shocking downfalls and ruined careers. From overdoses to public meltdowns, these celebrities once ruled the screen but became infamous for their battles with addiction. In this account, we're diving into the 20 worst junkies in Hollywood history, stars whose drug habits spiraled out of control in ways you won't believe. Number 1. Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper's legacy in Hollywood is vast, but his struggles with addiction are equally legendary. The actor and filmmaker, known for films like Easy Rider and Apocalypse Now, experienced a dark period in the 1970s and 1980s when drugs took a hold of his life. Hopper was addicted to a variety of substances, including cocaine, alcohol, and marijuana, which severely affected his professional and personal life. His drug use was so intense that it led to bizarre behavior both on and off set, and at one point, he even lived in isolation in Taos, New Mexico, to escape the chaos of Hollywood. The depths of his addiction reached a point where Hopper reportedly consumed as much as 3 grams of cocaine a day, leading to erratic and destructive behavior. This lifestyle almost cost him his career as he became unreliable and difficult to work with. There were instances where Hopper would disappear for days on drug binges, causing delays in film productions. His erratic behavior made it impossible for studios to insure him, which meant fewer roles came his way. Despite his downward spiral, Hopper managed to seek help and recover in the late 1980s. After entering rehab, he made an incredible comeback and became sober. His role in Blue Velvet marked the beginning of a new chapter in his career, but the scars of addiction were still visible. Number 2. Chris Farley. Chris Farley was a comedic genius whose physical comedy and larger-than-life personality made him a beloved figure in the world of entertainment. However, beneath the humor and energy, Farley struggled with substance abuse that would ultimately lead to his tragic demise. Farley's addiction to drugs and alcohol was no secret. He often battled his demons publicly, and his love for excess mirrored the characters he played on shows like Saturday Night Live. Farley's drug of choice was cocaine, but he also frequently abused heroin and alcohol. His addiction spiraled out of control in the mid-1990s as his fame skyrocketed. Farley was in and out of rehab numerous times, but each stint seemed to be followed by another relapse. His destructive lifestyle affected not only his health but also his professional relationships. Directors and producers found it increasingly difficult to work with him as his weight ballooned and his behavior became more erratic. There were moments on set where Farley would be visibly impaired, making it clear that the funny man was struggling with much more than the pressures of Hollywood. Farley's untimely death at the age of 33 was eerily similar to that of his idol, John Belushi, who also died from a drug overdose. In December 1997, Farley was found dead in his Chicago apartment, having overdosed on a combination of cocaine and morphine. Number 3. Robin Williams. Robin Williams was a force of nature, known for his quick wit and energetic performances that could light up any room. While Williams brought joy to millions through his work, he also battled addiction behind the scenes. Early in his career, Williams was a heavy cocaine user, a habit that began in the 1970s and carried on through the early 1980s. His drug use was at its peak during the height of his fame on Mork and Mindy, a period when Williams seemed invincible to the outside world. Just like Chris Farley, the death of John Belushi in 1982 from a drug overdose was a wake-up call for Williams. That tragedy, coupled with the birth of his son, led him to quit cocaine and alcohol cold turkey. For many years, Williams remained sober, but his battle with addiction was not entirely behind him. In the early 2000s, he relapsed and began drinking again, which led him back into rehab in 2006. Despite his comedic brilliance and larger-than-life personality, Williams wrestled with the internal struggle of addiction and depression, which made his journey even more complex. While Williams had managed to stay clean from drugs for years, his ongoing battle with mental health issues was a constant weight on his shoulders. In 2014, the world was shocked by his sudden passing, and though his death was attributed to suicide, the role of addiction in his life cannot be overlooked. Number 4. Aaron Carter. Aaron Carter's rise to fame was meteoric. As a teen pop sensation, Carter found success with hits like I Want Candy, but with fame came a whirlwind of pressure that led him down a dangerous path. By his 20s, Carter's life was overshadowed by addiction. He struggled with a mixture of drugs, including Xanax, opiates, and alcohol, which took a heavy toll on his mental and physical health. Publicly, Carter's addiction was evident in his erratic behavior, slurred speech, and numerous run-ins with the law. Carter's career was already faltering due to his addiction, and his personal life was equally chaotic. He made frequent appearances in tabloids for his outbursts, arrests, and public fights. His face showed the toll addiction had taken on him, and fans who remembered the vibrant teenager now saw a man who was rapidly spiraling out of control. Carter himself was open about his struggles, appearing on talk shows and social media to discuss his addiction, but even these efforts were often followed by relapse. Despite several stints in rehab, Aaron Carter continued to battle his demons. His addiction became a cycle he could not seem to break, and it affected not only his career but his relationships with family and friends. Sadly, on November 5, 2022, Aaron Carter passed away. While the cause of his death was initially unknown, it was later determined to be an accidental drowning, which occurred after Carter inhaled difluoroethane and took alprazolam. Number 5. Robert Downey Jr. Today, Robert Downey Jr. is one of Hollywood's most celebrated actors, known for his iconic role as Iron Man. However, there was a time when his career and life seemed doomed by his struggle with addiction. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Downey Jr. was in the throes of a severe drug problem, using a dangerous combination of heroin, cocaine, and alcohol. His drug use began at a young age, influenced by his father, who also struggled with addiction. By the time Downey Jr. reached adulthood, drugs had taken over his life. His addiction led to numerous arrests and run-ins with the law. At one point, Downey Jr. was even sent to prison for drug-related offenses, and his career came to a standstill as a result. His personal life was in shambles, with failed relationships and alienation from his peers in Hollywood. For years, Downey Jr. seemed like a lost cause, an actor who would never recover from the depths of addiction. However, Downey Jr. managed to turn his life around in one of the most remarkable comebacks in Hollywood history. After several stints in rehab, he became sober in 2003 and slowly rebuilt his career. His role as Tony Stark in the Iron Man franchise catapulted him back to stardom, proving that recovery is possible even in the darkest of circumstances. Number 6. Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen has long been a well-known figure in Hollywood, but his off-screen antics have often overshadowed his work as an actor. At the height of his career, Sheen was raking in millions for his role on 2.5 Men, but behind the scenes, he was battling a serious drug addiction. His preferred choices were cocaine and alcohol, and his addiction grew out of control. Sheen's behavior became increasingly erratic, culminating in bizarre interviews where he claimed he had tiger blood and was winning, even as his life seemed to be falling apart. The extent of Sheen's drug use was shocking. He admitted to spending tens of thousands of dollars on drugs and alcohol, and his wild lifestyle was widely reported in the media. His addiction caused numerous health issues, including hospitalizations and near-death experiences. There were even reports of Sheen locking himself in his home for days, surrounded by drugs and alcohol in a dangerous downward spiral. His addiction also led to the loss of his job on 2.5 Men, one of the highest-paying roles on television at the time. Despite all of this, Sheen's battle with addiction continues to be a subject of public fascination. He has tried to get clean numerous times, checking in and out of rehab, but his struggles persist. Number 7. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan's rise to fame seemed like a Hollywood fairy tale. She was a child star with promising talent, known for her roles in movies like The Parent Trap and Mean Girls. However, as she grew older, Lohan's life took a dark turn, and she became infamous for scandal and addiction. Her drug and alcohol problem started in her teenage years, and by the time she reached her 20s, Lohan's struggles were well documented. Cocaine and alcohol became her drugs of choice, and she was often seen partying at clubs until the early hours of the morning. Lohan's addiction led to numerous run-ins with the law. She was arrested multiple times for DUI and drug possession, and her repeated stints in rehab became a public spectacle. Her behavior became increasingly erratic, with reports of missed work, unpredictable outbursts, and a general decline in her physical and mental health. As her addiction worsened, Lohan's once bright career began to crumble. She lost major movie roles and became known more for her off-screen troubles than her acting talent. The public watched as Lohan spiraled out of control, unable to maintain sobriety despite numerous attempts. Her struggle with addiction was an example of how quickly fame can turn into a nightmare. While Lohan has made several attempts at recovery, her journey continues to be a difficult one. Number 8. Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse was a vocal powerhouse, known for her soulful music and distinct style. However, her incredible talent was matched by her destructive addiction to drugs and alcohol. Winehouse's battle with addiction became a major part of her public persona, and her struggles were frequently reported in the media. Her drug use included heavy drinking, cocaine, heroin, and other substances that wreaked havoc on her health. Winehouse's addiction was so severe that it often overshadowed her music career, with performances becoming unpredictable and sometimes incoherent. The intensity of Winehouse's addiction was evident in her deteriorating appearance and erratic behavior. She was frequently photographed stumbling out of bars, her body showing the physical toll of years of substance abuse. Her addiction strained her relationships with family, friends, and band members who tried to help her but were often unsuccessful. Her public struggles included a disastrous tour in 2011, where she slurred her words and was unable to perform, leaving fans heartbroken and worried for her well-being. Despite her immense talent, Winehouse was never able to fully escape the grip of addiction. In July 2011, she was found dead in her London apartment from alcohol poisoning, a tragic end to a promising career. Her music continues to inspire, but her battle with addiction remains a haunting part of her legacy. Number 9. Courtney Love. Courtney Love has always been a polarizing figure in the music and entertainment world, known for her raw talent and wild behavior. As the lead singer of the band Hole and the widow of Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain, Love's life has been anything but ordinary. However, much of her career has been marred by her long struggle with addiction. Love has openly admitted to using a variety of substances, including heroin, cocaine, and prescription pills, often to excess. Her drug use started in the 1980s, and she has battled addiction on and off ever since. The chaos of Love's addiction was often on full display for the public. Her outbursts, unpredictable behavior, and erratic interviews became tabloid fodder, and her personal life seemed to spiral out of control. Her addiction strained her relationships, particularly with her daughter, Frances Bean Cobain, who was temporarily taken away from her due to Love's drug use. The death of her husband, Kurt Cobain, in 1994 also sent her deeper into her addiction, and for years, Love struggled to maintain sobriety despite her ongoing battle. Drugs have long been a tragic undercurrent in the lives of many iconic figures in Hollywood and the music industry, leaving behind stories of triumph, struggle, and heartbreak. Love has managed to remain a prominent figure in rock music. Though her career has been far from smooth, her addiction has resulted in numerous legal troubles, health scares, and periods of rehabilitation. Number 10. Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger's tragic death in 2008 shocked the world and revealed the dangerous side of Hollywood's fast-paced lifestyle. Ledger, known for roles in Brokeback Mountain and The Dark Knight, was not widely known for wild partying or public drug use. However, behind closed doors, he was struggling with a growing dependence on prescription medication. The pressures of fame, combined with physical and mental exhaustion from his demanding roles, led Ledger down a dangerous path of self-medication. Ledger's drug use primarily centered around prescription medications, including painkillers, sleeping pills, and anti-anxiety drugs. He had been dealing with insomnia for years, and the combination of these powerful medications proved to be deadly. His reliance on these drugs began to increase, especially during the filming of The Dark Knight, a role that took an immense toll on his health. Friends and colleagues expressed concern about his well-being, but Ledger's need to manage his physical and emotional pain pushed him deeper into addiction. In January 2008, Ledger was found dead in his New York apartment from an accidental overdose of prescription drugs. His death was a devastating loss for Hollywood and for his fans, who saw him as a rising star with limitless potential. Number 11. Demi Lovato. Demi Lovato's rise to fame as a child star on Barney and Friends and later as a Disney Channel sensation was meteoric, but behind the scenes, her life was anything but charmed. Growing up in the public eye, Lovato faced intense pressure from a young age. By the time she was a teenager, she had developed a dangerous dependency on drugs and alcohol. Lovato's struggles were not just limited to addiction, she also battled an eating disorder, self-harm, and mental health challenges, including bipolar disorder. Her addiction to cocaine, in particular, became widely known when she admitted to using the drug during her busy work schedule, sometimes even sneaking it onto airplanes. Her addiction worsened as she grew older. Despite multiple stints in rehab, she struggled to maintain sobriety. In 2018, her fight with addiction took a terrifying turn when she overdosed on opioids at her Los Angeles home. The overdose left her in critical condition, suffering from several strokes, brain damage, and near-fatal complications. This moment shook her fans and the industry, as Lovato had publicly shared her recovery journey many times before. Despite her near-death experience, Lovato has been open about her continuing battle with addiction. She has relapsed and returned to rehab multiple times, but has used her platform to raise awareness about mental health and the importance of seeking help. Number 12. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, one of the most iconic figures in Hollywood history, was known for her beauty, talent, and tragic life. While her public persona was one of glamour and success, her personal life was far from perfect. The pressures of fame, combined with a series of failed relationships and a deep sense of insecurity, led Monroe down a dark path of addiction. By the late 1950s, Monroe had developed a serious dependency on prescription drugs, particularly barbiturates, which she used to help her sleep and cope with anxiety. Her addiction worsened, affecting her work as she became increasingly unreliable on set. Her erratic behavior caused tension with directors and co-stars. Monroe's dependency on drugs also contributed to her declining mental health as she struggled with depression and isolation. Despite her stunning performances in films like Some Like It Hot and The 7-Year Itch, her personal life was in turmoil. In August 1962, Monroe was found dead in her home from an apparent overdose of barbiturates. Her death sent shockwaves through the world and brought attention to the growing issue of substance abuse in Hollywood. Number 13. Judy Garland. Judy Garland, forever linked to her iconic role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, lived a life far removed from the fairy tale her fans imagined. Garland's journey into addiction began at a young age, fueled by the pressures of the Hollywood studio system. MGM introduced Garland to pep pills to keep her energy up during long shoots and sleeping pills to help her rest afterward. This dangerous cycle led to a lifelong battle with addiction. As Garland grew older, her reliance on drugs intensified. She struggled with severe depression and anxiety, exacerbated by her addiction. Her personal life also suffered, with failed marriages and financial difficulties adding to her stress. Despite these challenges, she continued to deliver breathtaking performances. However, her erratic behavior on set became more frequent, and her health declined. In 1969, Garland was found dead from a barbiturate overdose in her London home at the age of 47. Her death marked the end of a life filled with immense talent and overwhelming pain, serving as a heartbreaking example of the toll fame and exploitation can take on young stars. Number 14. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley, the undisputed king of rock and roll, revolutionized music and became a global icon. However, as his fame grew, so did his dependence on prescription drugs. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Presley's life became increasingly dominated by medications such as sedatives, painkillers, and amphetamines. Initially prescribed for health issues, these drugs became a crutch as Presley struggled to cope with the demands of fame. Of his career and the pressures of fame, by the time Presley was in his 40s, his addiction had taken a noticeable toll on his physical and mental health. He gained a significant amount of weight, suffered from mood swings, and his once legendary stage presence began to wane. Presley's drug use was a well-kept secret for much of his career, but those closest to him were aware of his struggle. Despite multiple health scares, Presley continued to perform, often relying on a cocktail of drugs to get through his grueling tour schedule. In August 1977, Presley's life came to a sudden and tragic end when he was found dead in his Graceland mansion at the age of 42. His death was officially attributed to a heart attack, but it was widely known that drugs played a significant role in his demise. Number 15. Janis Joplin. Janis Joplin was a force of nature in the music world, known for her raw vocal talent and electrifying stage presence. As one of the leading figures of the 1960s counterculture movement, Joplin embraced the free-spirited, rebellious lifestyle that defined the era. Unfortunately, this lifestyle also included heavy drug use, particularly heroin, which quickly became Joplin's drug of choice. Heroin, along with alcohol, fueled Joplin's creative process, but it also took a devastating toll on her health and well-being. Joplin's addiction became increasingly evident as her career skyrocketed. While her performances were nothing short of legendary, offstage, Joplin was battling her demons. She was known for her wild behavior, and her drug use became a part of her public persona. However, behind the scenes, Joplin's addiction was tearing her apart. Her dependence on heroin left her isolated and emotionally fragile, and despite attempts to get clean, she continued to relapse. In October 1970, at the age of 27, Joplin's life came to a tragic end when she was found dead in her hotel room from a heroin overdose. Her death shocked the world and cemented her status as a member of the infamous 27 Club, a group of iconic musicians who died at the age of 27. Joplin's battle with addiction was a defining aspect of her life, but her immense talent and contributions to music continue to be celebrated. Number 16. John Belushi. John Belushi was the wild and unpredictable genius behind iconic comedic performances that still resonate today. Known for his roles on Saturday Night Live and films like Animal House, he was more than just a comedian, he was a force of nature. But Belushi's talent came at a cost. His larger-than-life persona, fueled by the pressure to always be the life of the party, hid a much darker reality. Behind the scenes, Belushi was a man who struggled deeply with addiction, and unfortunately, that struggle became a part of his public identity. As his fame skyrocketed, so did his addiction. Belushi was notorious for his hard-partying lifestyle, indulging heavily in drugs like cocaine and heroin. At first, the drugs seemed to enhance his manic energy on screen, making his performances even more unforgettable. But behind the wild performances and untamed comedy, Belushi's health and personal life were spiraling out of control. His friends and family were increasingly alarmed by his behavior, but no one seemed able to slow him down. He became trapped in a cycle where the drugs fueled his performances, and his success encouraged him to party even harder. Tragically, John Belushi's life came to a shocking end in March 1982, when he was found dead at the Chateau Marmorne Hotel in Los Angeles. He was just 33 years old. His death was ruled an accidental overdose of heroin and cocaine, a deadly combination known as a speedball. The loss of Belushi sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Number 17. Philip Seymour Hoffman. Philip Seymour Hoffman was widely regarded as one of the finest actors of his generation, with performances that left audiences spellbound. His roles in films like Capote, The Master, and Doubt cemented his reputation as a master of his craft. However, what many did not know was that Hoffman was fighting a private battle with addiction, a struggle that began in his youth and, despite years of sobriety, eventually led to his downfall. Hoffman's journey into addiction began early in his career, but after a stint in rehab, he managed to stay clean for over 20 years. For much of his life, it seemed that Hoffman had conquered his demons. He built a successful career, earned widespread acclaim, and became a respected figure in Hollywood. But even after 2 decades of sobriety, addiction still had a grip on him. In 2013, Hoffman relapsed and began using prescription drugs, which soon escalated to heroin. His return to drugs shocked those close to him, and though he tried to seek help by entering rehab once again, the addiction proved too powerful to overcome. In February 2014, the world was devastated by the news of Hoffman's death. He was found in his New York City apartment with a syringe in his arm and numerous bags of heroin nearby. The official cause of death was an acute mixed drug intoxication, a tragic end to a life filled with talent and promise. Number 18. Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore's story is one of resilience and recovery, though it began in the darkest corners of Hollywood's underbelly. Born into the famous Barrymore family, Drew was thrust into the spotlight at an incredibly young age. By the time she was 7, she had already become a household name thanks to her role in E.T. Extraterrestrial. However, with that early fame came immense pressure, and Barrymore found herself entangled in the Hollywood party scene before she even became a teenager. By the time she was 9 years old, Drew was drinking alcohol regularly. By 12, she had moved on to cocaine, and her life was spiraling out of control. Drew's drug use quickly became public knowledge, and she earned a reputation as a wild child of Hollywood. Her addiction was a serious issue, one that led her to rehab for the first time at just 13 years old. But it was not a quick fix. She relapsed several times and even attempted suicide at the age of 14. These were not just teenage rebellions, they were signs of deep emotional distress and the toll that fame was taking on her young life. Her struggles were splashed across tabloids, but what most people did not see was the immense pain she was carrying beneath the surface. Despite her early battles with addiction, Drew Barrymore's story does not end in tragedy. By 15, she had completed another stint in rehab and decided to take control of her life. She made a conscious decision to distance herself from the toxic environment she had been raised in and began rebuilding her career from the ground up. Over the years, she became a symbol of recovery and resilience, reinventing herself as an actress, producer, and entrepreneur. Number 19. Brad Renfro. Brad Renfro's rise to fame came early, much like Drew Barrymore's. As a child actor, Renfro starred in films like The Client and Apt Pupil, earning critical praise for his performances. He had the kind of talent that suggested he would have a long and successful career in Hollywood. However, like so many young stars before him, Renfro struggled to cope with the pressures of fame. He started experimenting with drugs and alcohol at a young age, and his addiction quickly escalated. By the time he was in his late teens, Renfro's once promising career was derailed by his substance abuse issues. His addiction to heroin and other drugs became public knowledge, and his behavior grew increasingly erratic. He was arrested multiple times for drug-related offenses, including possession of heroin. His legal troubles and struggles with addiction made it difficult for him to find work in Hollywood, and his health began to deteriorate as he continued to abuse drugs. Despite several attempts to get clean, Renfro's addiction proved too strong to overcome, and his once bright future in the entertainment industry began to fade. In January 2008, Brad Renfro was found dead at the age of 25 from a heroin overdose. His death came as a shock to many, but to those who knew him well, it was a tragic inevitability. Renfro's life was cut short before he had the chance to fulfill his potential, and his death served as yet another heartbreaking reminder of how addiction can destroy lives. Number 20. Anna Nicole Smith. Anna Nicole Smith was a larger-than-life figure who captured the public's attention with her beauty, charm, and undeniable charisma. From her beginnings as a Playboy model to her time as a reality TV star, Smith's life was always in the spotlight. But behind the glamorous image, Smith was battling a serious addiction to prescription drugs. Her dependency on medications like painkillers and sedatives became increasingly obvious as her behavior grew more erratic in the public eye. The pressures of fame, combined with personal tragedies, only deepened her reliance on these substances. Smith's struggles with addiction came to the forefront after the sudden death of her son, Daniel, in 2006. His passing devastated her, and she sank deeper into depression, using drugs to cope with the overwhelming grief. Her dependency on prescription medications became more pronounced, and her public appearances were often marred by slurred speech and erratic behavior. Despite her attempts to keep up appearances, it was clear to those around her that Smith was struggling to keep her life together. In February 2007, Anna Nicole Smith was found dead in her hotel room at the age of 39 from an overdose of prescription drugs. Her death, just months after the loss of her son, was the final chapter in a life marked by both incredible highs and devastating lows. Despite her larger-than-life persona, Smith's addiction was a force that she ultimately could not overcome. Which of these Hollywood stories shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and if you want to hear more about the highs and lows of famous celebrities, be sure to subscribe to our channel.